Adventure in Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio. And man, this is a very special live show because it's one of my favorite subjects. It's people that are criminals and people that people think are criminals that are not criminals. And that's a bigger part for me, to be honest, because there are way too many innocent people in jail, in prison. And then, like, it's like sometimes after 30 years, they're like, oh, we just figured out it wasn't really you. Sorry. Here's $10 to get a bus ticket and enjoy your life. And I think that's one of the problems right there, you know, but we have some solutions because we have one of the most renowned experts of our network in true crime, the infamous, legendary Nanette Bartow. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
Good. I didn't even write that speech down. It just all came to me right as I was talking. You
rolled right off the tongue.
Yeah. I mean, because it's true, though. Like, listen, I talked to you off the air. I'm like, Jesus Christ, she knows way too much about this stuff. But that's a good thing. Because there's too many people out there that don't know way too much. But this is a special episode because normally you talk about the Zodiac Killer.
Yes.
Who may or may not be a friend of mine. I cannot confirm nor deny. But in case he's listening, I'm a friend. Just saying. So, but this is something that is near and dear to my heart because Nanette is going to stand up for somebody who doesn't deserve to be where they are, and we're going to find out why. So take it away, Nanette.
Well, I was contacted about 2.5 years ago by a client who wanted me to look at some handwriting and determine whether or not a particular person had written an entry in an evidence log. And of course, he was questioning the officer that had arrested him in a murder case. So I'm going to back it up to where he was and what has happened, and then we can discuss the evidence as it unfolds. Somewhere at the end of February, my client had sold a very expensive piece of art for about $300,000. He had been a renter of a room of the victim, Hak Ju Kim, since September of 1995. And in February of 1996, she had indicated that she was having problems selling a house in San Jose. She needed some investment money and asked him to borrow on a personal guarantee the $300,000 that he had just sold the piece of art for. And in exchange, he would live at her place rent-free for, I think it was about 9 months. So March through December of 1996, he was supposed to be able to live there rent-free, and that would offset the interest that she would have paid had she taken the loan out through a bank. So on March 1st, he entered into that contract with her and he gave her $300,000. And by March 31st of 1996, Hak Ju Kim was dead. She was in the midst of actively putting together an investment deal for I want to say it was a video store or something to that notion. She was getting ready to purchase a business, which is what she had indicated she was going to be doing with that money, which was investing it. On March 30th of 1996, Mr. Wilson sold a second piece of antique art for about $400,000. And this was on a Friday evening. So, of course, he didn't have an opportunity to take that money to the bank and put it into his safety deposit box, which meant that he had it stored in his backpack in his bedroom. Saturday comes around, which is March 30th, and he is off to have lunch. And after eating his lunch, he discovers a woman has left her purse at the diner, and he attempts to track her down, gives it to the busboy. The busboy can't find her, and ultimately the purse is delivered to the owner of the sandwich shop that he is eating at. He leaves from the sandwich shop at approximately 1:35 in the afternoon, and he begins his walk home, which takes him approximately 25 minutes. About 5 minutes into his walk, he stops, he calls the yellow cab, and he asks for them to pick him up at his place of residence, in which case he then continues his walk until he gets home. When he gets home, he notices there's a vehicle in the driveway that has a car cover over it. He doesn't recognize the vehicle, and he knows that his landlord doesn't put a car cover on her car, and her BMW is gone. So he gathers his things. He waits for the yellow cab. Yellow cab doesn't show up. So he calls them back, and he indicates, they were supposed to be here at 2. It's now 2 minutes past 2. Where's this cab? And it turns out that the dispatcher had actually given the wrong address to the taxi cab. So he was on the other side of town. By the time he made it to the actual location where he was supposed to pick up Mr. Wilson, it was approximately 2:04, 2:05 p.m. And Mr. Wilson, grabs all of his belongings and loads them up in the cab, and they are off to San Francisco. When they get to San Francisco, the cabbie is not very familiar with the streets there, finds himself to be frustrated, driving in circles. Ultimately, Mr. Wilson tells him, I'd like you to just take me to the Caltrans station where he can just catch a bus or whatever he needs to into the city to find his friends. Once they get there, the cab driver accidentally slams Mr. Wilson's hand in the car door, which tears off a fingernail and breaks the finger. He's bleeding profusely. It's not stopping. So he ultimately ends up at the hospital in San Francisco, where they address his needs by way of obviously controlling the bleeding and splinting the broken finger. And he's there from approximately 4 p.m. until about 10 o'clock at night, in which case he's discharged. Once he gets discharged, he finds himself something to eat. He makes it back to the bus station, and he purchases a ticket at approximately 11:30 in the evening. And that ticket is for a 12:10 ride home, which is going to take approximately an hour from San Francisco to Palo Alto. He makes it back to the bus station in Palo Alto, or the Caltrans station, and he makes his walk home. By the time he gets home, it's approximately 2:30, 2:45 in the morning, and he decides he needs something to eat and drink at this point in time. So he gets up, he leaves to the 7-Eleven, and he comes back. And now, mind you, in his particular room that he has a backdoor entry. So he doesn't have to come through the house. He can come through the back door and not have to see anybody. And that's what he did when he got home. And of course, when he left to go to 7-Eleven, he did the same thing, not to disturb anybody else who might be sleeping in the house. When he gets back and he's done eating, he needs to use the restroom, which causes him to have to walk into the actual house itself. And on his way to the bathroom, he notices that the basement door is wide open. The light is on. So he looks downstairs and he sees his landlord at the bottom of the stairs. That's pretty much what kicks off the events of him then ultimately being arrested for this murder.
Before you go on, can I give some sound effects of what we have that happened already?
Yeah. That's the one I was looking for. He ultimately has another roommate in the house, and that roommate, William Coleman, I guess, was in his room when Peter started yelling. Mr. Wilson started yelling for Mr. Coleman to come and address and to help him with Hokju Kim, that she's at the bottom of the steps and it looks like she might be knocked out or injured or what have you, but please come help. And he's yelling through the door and banging on Mr. Coleman's door. Ultimately, when he pops the door open, he finds Coleman standing on the other side of the door, fully dressed, shoes, pants, sweatshirt, like he's getting ready to go somewhere at 3:45, 3:50 in the morning. Another thing about Hokju Kim is you're not allowed to wear shoes in the house. So here we have Mr. Coleman fully dressed with shoes on in the house, which is something that's completely abnormal because they're not allowed to wear shoes in the house. He explains to Mr. Coleman that he wants him to call the police. He asks him on a couple of occasions. Mr. Coleman finally makes it out into the house, looks down the stairwell, sees Hak-Ju Kim sitting down there, and approximately 3:53 a.m. he calls the police, which of course they then come out, and we know where this is heading, right? Everybody in the house is now a suspect.
Hold on, I have another sound effect for this part. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's find out what happens next now.
Well, basically, the gist of all of the transcripts and everything that I've read thus far states that when the police officers arrived that were supposed to do the forensic walkthrough, basically take pictures of everything, start tagging everything and marking everything, because Hak-Ju Kim is dead at the bottom of the stairs. She has a 4x12 beam that's laid across her chest, which evidently Mr. Wilson attempted to try and remove from her, but was incapable of doing that because he just suffered the injury to his hand via the cab door. Either way, the officers that were supposed to begin taking the forensic pictures and everything receive a phone call from their, I don't know if it's their sergeant or their captain or whoever it is, instructs them to stop what they're doing and head back to the police department. Because at this point in time, they've now taken Mr. Coleman and Mr. Wilson down to the police department, and they've been instructed to come back and do the forensics on these two individuals, which really doesn't make any sense, because securing the crime scene, I would have thought, would have been the most important thing to do. Taking pictures, tabbing down things, identifying all of this. Have somebody else at the police station do this work with these two individuals is what I think. In the process, they took Mr. Wilson's backpack, which I indicated had $400,000 in it. It also had the purchase of his ticket back from San Francisco. It had the he had a note inside of there where he wrote down the scenario that occurred at the sandwich shop that talked about the woman that had left the purse, the time that it happened. So it's basically exculpatory evidence that is found.
Can I ask a question about that? Why did he have notes of that? Like, if I had a scenario like that happen to me, and I'm asking because this is what listeners probably thinking, like, I wouldn't have taken notes.
Okay, so, interestingly enough, he is a Stanford student at this time. He's 31 years of age, and he's going to Stanford University, and he's also working inside the pharmacy at hospitals. So I think that in his own mindset, taking notes is just something that you do when something occurs.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That's kind of like breaking news, right?
Right. Well, and if this person... And if this person was to come back and want to say that something was missing from this purse, he's also, marked down all of the information.
Well, see, that makes sense. Like, I would definitely take pictures and stuff, because you never know. Sometimes there's people out there that would do that on purpose to try and get somebody in trouble.
Would do what on purpose?
Like leave their purse.
Oh.
And say,
see if somebody steals it.
And they bet on that somebody is a good Samaritan, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, I had 300,000 in that purse and it's gone now, or something like that. Right. Well, and that's what made this so interesting, is that I was completely unaware of the money in his backpack. When I was doing this, I kept wondering what was the motive for this officer to have framed him. So basically, when he's ordered back to the police department and he brings his backpack, before he is walking out of the room after they've processed him forensically, Officer Yor rips the backpack off of his back. Now, mind you, this is now March 31st, 1996, which is a Sunday. And the officer proceeds to illegally search and seize items out of the backpack. Mr. Wilson never saw this backpack ever again, by the way, which doesn't make any sense at all. I believe that.
Yeah, if everything is on the up and up, why would he have never seen his backpack? While he was being detained, he wanted to make a phone call, and he asked to use the address book out of the inside of his backpack. And the arresting officer, Michael Yore, indicated, as long as you're going to allow me to search the backpack, I'll let you have your address book. And Mr. Wilson, or Mr. Wilson, is, no, you're not searching my backpack. And I'm sure that his resistance to that search was because of that $400,000 that was inside of it.
Now, I have a question there. Again, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because this is what people might be thinking, but it's, well, if he didn't do anything wrong, why is he worried about his backpack getting searched? I mean, I know what my answer is, but I want to hear what you have to say.
$400,000.
Okay, but if you have documentation that you sold a piece of art and the money was in there, like, I know what I would say. I would basically say, well, because there's 400,000 cash, and they're not going to believe a word I say because it's cash in a backpack, and who carries that kind of cash in a backpack? That's why I wouldn't want them to search it. If it
possibly. The other side of it makes me believe that who he was, I mean, again, 31-year-old student at Stanford working for the medical industry, he probably knew his rights. And he knew that they had no right or probable cause to search his backpack. And he didn't want them to do that. So, I mean, I've never really specifically asked that question in general to be able to answer why he didn't want it searched, but he didn't want it searched. And that was his right, was to not have it searched. Yes, unfortunately, absolutely. Michael Yore violated those rights, and he did search that backpack on the 31st of March. And when he
which
did,
should be enough to release him, by the way.
Should have been. Yeah, that was an illegal search and seizure. The search warrant was not granted until the following Monday, and that's because the judge isn't in until Monday. So if anybody's ever gone to jail on Friday through Sunday, you know you're not getting out until Monday when you see a judge. Yeah,
you're screwed. And I gotta say too, okay, so I do find that a lot of things with California happen this way. Like I had my own experience as a teenager where a cop illegally searched me as a teenager walking down the street with no probable cause and found some green stuff stuffed down my pants. Okay. But I also knew the law. And so I knew you can only go a thumb's reach at that point in time. And so I made sure
and it was 2 fingers down.
It was,
instead of a
it
thumb.
was a lot longer than a thumb for sure. So then when I go to court for this thing, I literally go into court with the whole illegal search and seizure thing. I lose. I leave the courtroom in Calabasas, get on the on-ramp of the 101 to hitchhike back to Agoura, because I had no vehicle because I was a teenager. And the police officer picked me up to give me a ride. And the first thing he says to me is like, come on, I do this every day. You think you're going to win that illegal search and seizure thing? And there lies the problem right there.
Right.
And so that's why I'm telling the story, because that other officer in your case felt like, if it goes to court, I can beat that. We deal with this all the time. I'm going to do whatever I have to convict this person.
And sure enough, he literally did. So basically, the handwriting that I was tasked with was the handwriting found atop the police report notes, which were copies of the train ticket and the note that was done inside the sandwich shop. And it specifically said in handwriting, taken from backpack March 31st, 1996. So that's the information that I had on top of both of these documents, one with the receipt, one with the actual note. And then there were 3 evidence logs. The 3 evidence logs that came in were atrocious. If our police departments are handling evidence logs in this manner, I'm scared. I'm scared for everybody. Because, there should not be 3 versions of an evidence log. There should be one version that is chronologically ordered, that everything took place in the proper manner, the right chain of command. We're looking at 3 different logs that purport different information with whiteout and obliterations and rewritings. And then on one of these evidence logs, it states removed 1 vial of blood. Now, whenever I see something where somebody specifically states 1, that means there was more than 1. But that's not the testimony the officers gave in trial. The officers in trial, except for the technician or the lab technician who actually drew the blood, the other police officers said there was only 1 vial of blood taken from Mr. Wilson. The lab tech indicates he pulled 2 vials of blood, 1 for DNA typing and 1 to determine whether or not he was on the drugs or alcohol or anything else like that. So I'm tasked with those 2 headers taken from backpack and removed 1 vial of blood. After doing the cross-referencing and comparison of the handwriting, I found that it was absolutely the arresting officer's handwriting, Michael Yore, based on other evidence logs that were taken on Coleman and other investigations and research done with other witnesses, that this handwriting was absolutely Michael Yore's. Now, we see that they obtained the search warrant on April 1st, 1996. Now, everything starts to look legitimate because there are police reports where another officer who has to join in with the arresting officer to do this search of the backpack, he indicates small U.S. currency, not this $400,000 that my client says is in his backpack, but small U.S. currency. Does not mention the receipt. So this officer has written up a log of what they've pulled out of this backpack, but it doesn't talk about this handwritten note from the sandwich shop. There's no receipt from the Caltrans. There's no talk about this $400,000 that was in the backpack. Now on April 1st, all the forensics is taken by a second officer down to the lab, because now the lab's open on Monday. So lab is not open on the weekends, just like the judge is not in chambers on the weekends. So in this particular batch of forensics that is taken to the lab, it indicates a vial of blood again. So now we've got 1 vial of blood that's been removed in the officer's handwriting. We've got 1 that has shown up with another officer to the forensic laboratory. My assumption at this point is that the individuals or the police officers that were supposed to be taking forensic pictures were called off of that task because Michael Yore has discovered this $400,000 in my client's backpack, and he is now determined to actually set him up for this murder. So he removes 1 of the vials of blood on Sunday, and he takes it back to the house, and he splashes. I just found out from a medical examiner's report this last week that he splashed 2 drops. So 2 drops of blood have convicted this man for almost 30 years and put him away in prison, which I would think that if anybody had 2 full drops of blood come out of them, you were likely bleeding pretty heavily, and there would be more than just 2 single drops. With that being said,
maybe he was checking his diabetes.
You don't even get that much. In the interim, he goes through trial, and it is a hung jury on the first trial. This second trial occurs in 2000, and at this point in time, the DA, Linda Condren, is the prosecuting district attorney for I'm going to say it's Santa Clara County. So Santa Clara County DA. She, in the second trial, convinces the judge that there should be no information in regards to third-party culpability introduced to the jury. That would just confuse them and take too much time. That's this man's only defense, is that somebody else did it. But she's able to get it wiped off the board. She's able to get her forensic medical team to testify erroneously to the actual forensics that involve semen and motile sperm, rigor mortis. These doctors all absolutely testify in a manner that later in other cases, they testify in the adverse. So It's interesting to note that she was capable of getting all of the third-party culpability information taken off the table, and that she had her own forensic team do their job as they did.
Well, $400,000 can pay off a lot of people too.
I started to wonder where the payoff was and if she was down for that, but it turns out that this particular year she convicted Mr. Wilson, she also got a seat as a judge.
Huh.
So for her, it may have just been about closing a case. And let's not forget, this is Palo Alto. This is one of the supreme places in the Bay Area to actually live. Lots of big money there. So the crunch to close cases and to, identify suspects in crimes are really, the pressure's really on there.
Well, it happens everywhere too, that like, no matter what the case is if they find something that could close the case, so people stop bothering them about an open case, they will go to whatever they have to, and that's that. And they don't want to. Once they've figured out that they're closing the case, they don't want to hear anything else, and that's terrible.
Correct. Well, in the process, not only has the backpack gone missing and the exculpable evidence, but the copies that were made, in which case Officer Yore had written, taken from backpack on March 31st, these pages go missing from the police report altogether. They've been replaced. So one is labeled page 9 in the police report. That page has been removed from the police report, and 9A has been inserted. And then 9A, it says, I removed this page. And it has a very funky set of initials on it. The more I look at this handwriting, it looks to me that it is also Officer Yore's handwriting. So he's removed a piece of exculpable evidence. The next page is page 126, and that has been removed, and 127 has been inserted in its place, and it merely again says, I removed page 126 with some initials on it. So the police file handed over to the defense team doesn't contain any of this information. And as much as Mr. Wilson has proclaimed, I was here, I had evidence, it was in my backpack, it was nowhere to be found. In approximately 2017, I think it is, he makes a request for his police file. He gets, first time ever, he gets his entire police file presented to him. He notices these pages that says, I removed page 9 and I removed page 126. So he then hits up his defense attorney and says, did you get these pages? And the defense attorney says, no, I got the ones that you got that say these were removed. So he made a specific request to Palo Alto Police Department. And this is what I love about shift changes and people filing things, is that eventually this stuff will come out because nobody knows how to cover it all up. So somebody brand new who doesn't have any background on this case whatsoever absolutely finds page 9 and page 126 and submits it to my client. He is now in possession of the actual evidence that supports Michael Yore had illegally searched, seized, and removed that evidence, and also threw that evidence basically away in terms of the actual trial itself so that it wasn't available to the defense. The DA failed hugely. There was a cigarette butt found in the basement next to the suspect, or to the victim. This was not tested, to my knowledge, for DNA. The victim was found half nude, waist up, robe to the left, shoes off to the side. Her pants and her underwear were pulled up. However, there was a leaf from the basement that was stuck to her butt, which means that at some point her butt was naked on that floor to have collected that leaf. And then the perpetrator redressed her by putting her underwear and her sweats on, which allowed that leaf to stay stuck to her buttocks until actual autopsy. So
this was an actual leaf, not a tattoo.
Actual leaf.
Okay,
matched other leaves found in the basement.
I just want to make sure, because there's people listening that like, maybe it's a tattoo and that's why it's there.
So it's obviously looking like a rape, and the forensic rape kit has identified seminal fluid and a motile sperm. Now, if anybody knows anything about motile sperm, I had to do my own research because I had to make sure that what my client was saying was true. Motile sperm only stays motile for approximately 12 hours, and then the tails begin to break and fall off. Only a couple conditions can prolong that, and that's going to be a cool or refrigerated area, in which case the basement was a cool place. So we're going to have a little bit of a longer time before that tail breaks. And then she was immediately taken and put in a refrigerator until the following morning when she was pulled out for autopsy. So again, keeping things a little bit cooler, but still not allowing that time frame to back itself all the way up an entire day. So they tried to state that Mr. Wilson had killed his landlord between 12:48 p.m. and 1:58 p.m. So within an hour and 10 minutes when he's actually gone. So that note that he had for his sandwich shop indicated he was there at 1:30 in the afternoon. So smack dab in the middle of when he's supposed to be committing this crime. That I don't know if the forensics was ever completed on the sperm or the semen, but that information and whether or not it had been ran had never been given to the defense either. So that was withheld from the defense. So she was trying to make the claim that there was not a rape, there was not a third party, when we have all this forensic evidence that suggests there was.
Is it possible that the Motown sperm came from Studio 54?
What is Studio 54?
You don't know Studio 54? It's like the most famous discotheque ever in the world in New York City, where there would definitely be a lot of Motown sperm. But you didn't say Motown.
No Motown. Motel.
Oh, okay.
It's able to move.
That's a whole
basically.
different story. Well, wouldn't that be mobile?
Well, they call it motile. I don't know why. Probably because mobile indicates getting up and walking, or a vehicle, or you know what I mean?
How do you know the sperm can't walk? Maybe that's why the tail. Like maybe that's why the tail broke, because it was walking.
It was bouncing like Tigger. No, this one was fully intact. So obviously DNA could be obtained from it.
Yeah.
And in light of all of this, forensic evidence that was not tested and then shoved aside, and then I've read the transcripts, in which case the DA had indicated that this is a waste of time. And the judge almost sounded like he was kind of against her when he said, this isn't about time. We have the time to try this correctly. But she was still successful at getting the judge to tell the jury, or for the judge to decide that the jury would not hear about rape or third party, because of the 2 drops of blood that was found at the scene that did track back to my client. So after I completed the handwriting examination, I received a letter from a independent forensic lab that had looked at the results of the DNA that was ran back in that time frame. And they indicated that it was strangely similar, the degradation. So basically, when DNA or blood or saliva or whatever sits out in the air, it degrades, breaks down, right? So when the blood is drawn from his arm, that degradation level is going to be a lot less, because it goes directly into a tube. So it's not open to the air. It's not open to all these other factors.
Yeah.
The degradation level of these DNAs together were identical, which leads the forensic lab to believe that the blood that was found at the scene of the crime was in fact the blood that came out of the vial that was taken from his arm. So basically they splashed these 2 drops down on the ground and then immediately turned around and picked it back up for the forensic testing, in which case it did not have the time to degrade like her blood did, because she had been beaten about the head. She had lacerations all over her head, and there was blood pretty much everywhere. So, but the fact that the degradation level of these of this DNA was identical indicates that yes, it came from that vial. We have proof that the police officer removed that vial of blood. So he definitely framed my client. And now that I finally know the motive is $400,000, everything started to make sense.
Yeah,
now,
that definitely makes sense. Now I have a question real quick. Serious one though. Wouldn't a blood splatter expert like Dexter, wouldn't I was going serious, but I had to throw in the Dexter. But
love me some Dexter.
Right? But seriously, though, wouldn't a blood splatter expert be able to know that the blood that was dropped and not like from the scene of the crime?
I don't know that blood splatter experts were something that they had back in 1996. Quite honestly, we would like to believe that these sciences have been around for as long as we've seen, like with Dexter. But the realism is they haven't been. And I want to say it wasn't even until the early 1990s that we even had what they called was link analysis, when they start to actually link murders from different areas and time frames to a single person. So it was like they had link blindness because the proximity and the time was so distant. They didn't know to put the two together because one person had actually committed that crime. So even the serial killer notion, I want to say, not until the late 80s, maybe even early 90s, did we even understand the word or term serial killer.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't think they had blood splatter experts. But even then, and I don't know how they splashed the two drops. I don't know if they literally just, put it upside down, which could appear as though if he had torn his fingernail, let's say, on this 4 by 8 by 12 piece of wood, then you would have suspected that there would have been a lot more blood in the general vicinity.
And you would be able to tell where it went. Like somebody would be able to analyze that specific action and know where the blood went. Whoever was planting the blood wouldn't be able to know that.
Exactly. Well, and his hand was completely bandaged. So mind you, he had just spent 6 hours at the emergency room having his hand addressed from the cab door, and the bandages did not have any sign of blood on them. So basically, the police officer who noted that he had this bandaged hand took him to a hospital where this reminds me of The Departed, where Leonardo DiCaprio punches the guy out and breaks his hand. And then Jack Nicholson wants to find out whether or not he's got a wire in it. So they bust his hand open, all broken in the cast. So this is what's going through my mind when they say they take him to the hospital. They have to dismantle this bandage, this crutch on his hand, all of these things so that they can do a proper forensic test. They did nail scrapings. They tested the bandage. They did everything. Not an ounce of her blood, not an ounce of Hak Ju Kim's blood is found on his bandaged hand, which is freshly bandaged, by the way. And he has the witnesses from the yellow cab who testifies on his behalf. The medical examiner at San Francisco Hospital testifies on his behalf. Everybody is on his side with the exception of the police officer and the DA.
And if they need me, I'm glad to go there and stick my finger to check my sugar level and drop some blood to show that might have been what happened. So if you let him know if he needs me to do that, I will.
Well, Mr. Wilson thinks that Mr. Coleman is actually the one who perpetrated this crime. Mr. Coleman indicated when he got home that night that her BMW was in the driveway. So that explicitly shows that when Mr. Wilson was home before he got the cab ride to San Francisco, that his landlord wasn't home. But by the time Mr. Coleman got home, her BMW was there and the car that had the car cover in it was no longer in the driveway. So that indicates that at a minimum, she was alive. She also had conversations and phone calls between her and her niece, which happened one at 12:48 p.m. She tried to reach her niece. Her niece wasn't home. Her niece then tried calling her back, not getting any answer, kind of scenario. So it indicates that she was still alive. The theory that they tried to put forth is that Mr. Wilson was attempting to steal her house. But I read the personal contract that they created, or the guarantee for the $300,000, and the house was not leverage. So it wasn't like this thing said, if you fail to pay me back, I get title to your house. This was just a personal guarantee, like somebody had given you or loaned you $5,000 with no collateral. So that whole notion, and they did actually have a document examiner come in on this case and testify to the fact that she had filled out the rent receipts and signed them for him because he was paying her cash, and she absolutely 100% signed this personal guarantee. So they tried to say that in this hour and 10 minutes, Mr. Wilson forced her under duress to fill out these receipts and to sign this personal contract for the $300,000 right before killing her. But the handwriting shows that it's been written freely and openly, so it doesn't suggest that she was under duress or having any issues at the time that it was written. And the document examiner testified to that. So their story and there's even news articles in which case they attempted to say that he was trying to steal her house from her. So they are literally even in the media chastising him and trying to make him look bad in order to facilitate the case that they want, which is to seal the deal on him and to close this case on him for murder that he didn't commit.
Has anybody talked to other inmates that he associates with while he's incarcerated, because, with all the research I do watching these crime shows, no, seriously,
Yeah.
the inmates, if they're guilty, they slip up at some time and share it with their bunkie or somebody in the jail.
That's what made this case so unique, for him to be reaching out. And by the way, in most cases, I don't get paid for people reaching out to me from prison. And that's typically because they don't have any means, they don't have anybody who supports them, and they literally are probably guilty of their case. I've never really found one where the individual 30 years later is still trying to fight for his innocence. I thought that to be kind of a tickler in my brain just to begin with. Who is still trying to fight after 30 years of maintaining innocence? And so, of course, you have to take a look at it for what it's worth. Now, Mr. Coleman, he was also a suspect. He had been arrested. He had been put on an ankle monitor. This man cut that monitor off and left the country.
Oh, well, guilty.
Hold
on. Wait. Guilty. Here.
Guilty.
Where's my guilty?
You need a gavel.
This was the best thing I could do. And short notice.
Don't break
this is my gavel.
Don't break your fart machine.
It's this. But see, I haven't
That
pulled
one
it out
farts.
because this is so interesting. I only bring that out like sometimes on my show, one of my co-hosts, she's really boring. So I'll just at some point. So she'll be quiet. But this is very interesting here, okay? Because it is, I said in the beginning of the show, all joking aside, the system's not perfect, obviously, but there are so many scenarios of people in prison that shouldn't be in prison. And here's what I know. Once you're under the DOJ, you don't really have rights anymore. So to your point, what you're saying, like, it doesn't even matter. There's a lot of times a judge can rule in your favor and DOJ has final say of whether to release you or not. Once you are incarcerated, your chances of exercising rights to get out diminish dramatically because nobody cares. You're guilty, and like they lock you up, and like you're forgotten yesterday's news, and you go away. To your point.
Oh, which brings to my point. When I wanted to get in there and do that interview with him, I went back and looked at the response from the individuals that are in charge of that, and they said no non-news media. So, and the news is already weaponized against these individuals. In most cases, they climb on whatever bandwagon that information is leaked to them, and they sell that to the public. We're looking at this last week, they're purportedly stating that they solved the yogurt murders in Texas, which to me blows me away because they claim that they've done this through DNA, which I can buy that. Okay, DNA can solve crimes. But then how in the heck did you wrongfully convict two people who spent 15 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit back in 2000 when you had DNA?
Well, I can answer that because I've had attorneys before that when they sent me their billable hours, right there in black and white, it said, they went to TCBY Yogurt to discuss the case and charged me for that. Okay.
Yeah.
So
they did.
So maybe the real yogurt killers were having yogurt discussing the case. And I don't know.
Well,
Maybe.
these district attorneys, yes, their job is to prosecute a live criminal. Their job is to uphold the law for those that are innocent, not to compound, to make it worse, to make it hard for them to present their case, to withhold forensic, to hire forensic witnesses, to erroneously testify to a jury in regards to forensics that's complete crap. So this DA, now having been a judge for the last 20 some years, to my knowledge, I believe she might still be practicing as a judge in some capacity, but she needs to be taken off the bench. Every case that she's ever handled or touched needs to be looked at, along with this officer, Michael Yore, because if he took this $400,000, which is exactly what the client is saying he did, then he's done this to other people and gotten away with it.
Absolutely. Now, here's my question. Here's another thing, too. It's very coincidence become a judge, because I know for a fact that when prosecutors prosecute cases, they get bonuses and promotions. So
that she did.
Even if there wasn't a payoff, listen, now I'm a judge. Okay.
I believe that what I read in regards to her receiving that seat was that it hadn't even officially been up for voting for yet. So she was just given it by the governor at that time.
Oh, wait.
And you know what's even crazier is that some of the cases that I read, some of the articles, not cases, but the articles on cases that she's heard, is that she's now known to be a very stiff, strict person on the bench, who indicates that if a prosecutor is not ready, their witnesses aren't available, or they don't have everything together when trial comes, she forces the prosecution to dismiss the case. But here she was, and maybe this is her retribution. Maybe this is her way of trying to make up for what she knew she did to obtain that seat. But she withheld information. She didn't present the forensics. She had witnesses get up there and testify to untruths in regards to forensics. And now she sits high and mighty on the bench, expecting more from the prosecutors beneath her than she afforded the very people that she prosecuted back when she was a prosecutor.
He should have never rejected her advances. That's all I'm saying.
The Zodiac Killer?
Nothing like a woman scorn, okay? And don't do it to a judge if you are somebody that got arrested, because just do whatever the judge tells you.
Well, and the other side of it, if Mr. Coleman wasn't guilty, but I have to believe that he was fully aware. He lives inside the house. He doesn't have a separate entrance to his door. He would have noticed that basement door being open because it's always closed. There's a draft that comes up from it, and they've always been instructed to keep the door closed. He would have seen that the light was on. So if he didn't commit this crime, albeit him sitting by and watching what they were capable of doing to Mr. Wilson, I probably would have cut off an ankle monitor and skedaddled myself too, because they were able to convict somebody who was completely innocent through the means. And of course, they stipulate at the second trial that yes, Mr. Coleman is not present for the jury to hear. They then do a mock play inside the courtroom, reading his testimony, the prosecution playing herself, the defense attorney playing himself, and then some stranger, I think an officer or somebody else, is reading the answers of Mr. Coleman, which was from the first trial.
Is it impossible that Mr. Coleman framed Mr. Wilson?
You know what? From everything that I can tell, all he really did was lie about his involvement with Mr. Wilson trying to get his attention, him not answering his bedroom door, him being fully dressed. Like, he lied about a whole bunch of things that make him look guilty, but he didn't say anything in his transcripts that would have indicated that Mr. Wilson was guilty. Problem is that our second suspect is absconded. He's gone and left the country, and they don't have anybody else to look at. They've got to solve it on. I think that the second Officer Yore saw the $400,000 in that backpack, there was no way Mr. Wilson was getting out. No way.
Or was it that the officer just really didn't like Slipknot?
Yay, Slipknot!
And that's not the real Mr. Wilson playing with Slipknot now. But you can't tell because there's a mask on. But the real Mr. Wilson is sitting in a jail cell because some police officer didn't like Slipknot's music. That's my analysis.
Well, I'm hoping that at any point, I know that he has filed for a writ of habeas corpus. My issue that I have with it is that he has to do this petition through Santa Clara County, which is exactly where this DA was. and prosecuted individuals. And I'm not sure if she then became I think she did maybe become an actual judge in Santa Clara County. So I'm concerned about them doing what's right on behalf of this individual who is innocent.
Oh, I'm concerned too, because seriously, I mean, when you file for an appeal, especially a habeas corpus, most of the time it ends up going back to the judge that sentenced you.
And that judge is not going to be available anymore, obviously, after 30 years of him being in prison. I don't think that it's going to go back to that same judge. However, it's going to reflect on somebody who was a judge. It's going to reflect on that DA, that prosecutor who made sure that this man was ultimately convicted of a crime that he did not commit.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not she was paid or for her it was a notch in the belt in order to get that seat as a judge, she has plenty of motivation as well.
Well, I've also heard, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've heard that a lot of times, especially in the federal court system, criminal court system, is that a bunch of the judges get together ahead of time of cases and they already determine guilt or not guilt in so many words.
Isn't that sick?
Yeah. And it's like, okay, it's like a bunch of them. Okay, let's decide what to do with this case.
That's as if to presume that every single prosecutor doesn't lie. Every single prosecutor is on the up and up, wanting the best for their citizens. Yeah. That there's nobody nefarious in that field or in that arena, which I think is...
The problem is prosecutors, they're paid to convict people. They're not paid to defend them or...
They are. They actually are. They take an oath to
I know they take an oath.
The United States. I mean, that means even the criminal, you have to be on the up and up. You have to provide all the evidence, whether it exculpates them or inculpates them. You have to provide all of that evidence to the other side. They're the ones that maintain control and chain of custody of the forensics from the time that the police department steps in and starts collecting that stuff, all the way through the testing and into the hands of the prosecutor when they actually go to trial. They are obligated to provide every single result to the other side, because what if we have a scenario just like this where we have an officer that's on the take and an individual who's being framed for a murder that they didn't commit? He had the right to know about the DNA testing on the cigarette butt, on the semen. The prosecutor tried to play it off like, oh, she could have had sex, mutual or consensual sex up to 3 days before, which is complete BS. Sperm is only motile for 12 hours.
Isn't going to be there for 3 days.
No, the leaf wouldn't have been there at all if she had had consensual sex. The leaf would never have made it underneath her underwear and underneath her sweats.
Okay, so I want to point something out to you. Unfortunately, there's so much more to talk about here. Unfortunately, we're past the 50 minutes and we didn't even get to your slideshow yet.
Well, I only had that up in case we wanted to view any of the evidence that I've put together, but I have about an 87 slide PowerPoint presentation that's put together where I've compiled the evidence, the transcripts, what the DA's done, what the officer's done, and what has been wrongfully done to Mr. Wilson. And like I told you, it was going to be hard pressed just to get the facts out in 50 minutes.
Well, yeah. And the next time I do a Jerry Lewis marathon or telethon, then we'll have time we'll have time to go through the 90 slides.
Free Peter Wilson. He needs this writ of habeas corpus. This man needs his life back. He spent 30 years in prison.
I want Family Guy back. Bring Family Guy back, man. Seriously.
All right, you better call it quits, Mr. Past the 50 minutes.
Yeah, I do have to call it quits, but I do want to say, seriously, we have to stop this crap where people spend time in prison just because the people investigating get lazy. We won't even say anything controversial. Sometimes it's just laziness. Okay, we did our job. We're not going to do any more. And I think, I think before you put somebody in prison, especially for that long period of time, you better be 100,000,000% sure of what you're doing, or you're going to be crooked, obviously. But listen, That's the problem too. When you get in any position of power, you even see it with criminals. Okay, any position of power, people start feeling like they're untouchable. So maybe this officer who got the $400,000, hypothetically, then maybe he just felt like he had the system down and knew he could get away with it, which obviously, if that is the case, he did get away with it.
What's even crazier is that I read an article that listed about 4 or 5 other murders that occurred during around the time frame of Hak Ju Kim, in which case there were people who had actually planned the murder out to steal money from family or what have you. These individuals only did 5 to 10 years for murder, for pre-planned murder. And we've got Mr. Wilson, which this wouldn't have been a pre-planned murder, obviously, even if he had committed it, it wasn't pre-planned, is 30 years with no chance of parole. I think the DA had to have known that Michael Yore was dirty. Why else in such a sentence?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, hold on. Okay. She's going to be over there in a couple minutes. Okay. So we got to talk to the other engineer because you're on my show, but you're going to be doing your show in a couple minutes. So
yeah.
I'm just letting them know. Okay. Nanette's working on another crime right now. She'll work on your crime in a couple minutes. Okay. So anyway,
thank you for having me here. I do appreciate getting this information out. I think everybody should root for this guy. Yeah,
I like having fun, but it is a good cause, and I always feel bad for people like that because what are you gonna do if you find out it's true that he was framed or whatever?
It is true. We've already got the DNA evidence. We've got the handwriting evidence. I've reached out to Julie Watts on CBS 13 News, investigative journalist. She asked me for some information. I provided her with my PowerPoint presentation. I've not heard back from her. I've reached out to people such as the Innocence Project. I just received a letter back from them this last week stating that they couldn't help with the writ of habeas corpus, but they believe that he is innocent and thanking me for working on this project. And, this is much like the Zodiac case and the fact that the FBI says, we don't have the resources. The only person who's going to do it is you, Nanette. We appreciate you for doing it. Well, thank you guys, but I'm not getting paid for this. I'm only out here to see that justice is fulfilled.
See, that's what I love about you, because you're like a real life superhero.
Where's my sound effects? Blah, 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 blah.
But here. All
right.
Okay, so hold on. We might have one more sound effect for you. Hold on. Let me find it here. Da, 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 da. How about we just do my closing song?
There you go.
Ready? Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay.
This is the Pipeman. It's gonna pipe. Play the pipe. Pipeman. Oh yeah. He's the Pipeman.
Play that pipe, Pipeman. Play that pipe,
Play that funky
Play
pipe.
that pipe, man, Pipeman.
Pipeman, a Pipeman, yeah.
Pipeman.
Funky Pipe on W4CY Radio.
That was at festival, at an interview, impromptu Pipeman song they wrote right during the interview, so we had to include it on this. But seriously, thank God for people like you, because it makes me so sad that people like Mr. Wilson, I was about to say Mr. Griffin, foiled by my own joke, that I really, my heart goes out to him, because that's what I was trying to say before, is like, even if he gets freed, what do you do after that much time passes? You can't even, like, I think of Shawshank Redemption and what's his name getting released at like 80 some odd years old, Brooks.
Well, the guys in the yogurt shop murders that got released after 15 years, they suffered with the stigma over their head for having been killers that they weren't for the last 15 years. So you're right. It doesn't matter. Once the media has weaponized themselves against you, you're screwed.
Yeah, no matter what. And then you can't really function in society. Who's going to hire you? Who's going to do this?
Exactly.
So basically, a lot of these inmates, bravo to him for standing up for himself, because by this point, a lot of these inmates won't even try anymore because they're already set in their lifestyle now. They know that where they are might be better off than being outside. You
can become
point.
Institutionalized after if you're in there for 30
1,000,000%.
years. How do you come out and actively become a productive member of society when you don't even recognize society anymore?
No, especially as quickly as society changes nowadays.
He didn't even have cell phones then.
Exactly. That's my point. No internet, no cell phones, no social media. He wouldn't know what to do. And that's why there's the recidivism rate is so high, because people that ends up happening to, they just like, just send me back to prison.
Yeah.
All right. You rock. Everybody make sure to tune in to Nanette, because she is the bomb, and she's going to hit the road, Jack, while she's finding the Zodiac.
Yes.
So check her out. And man, you rock. There's her show right up there, and there's her boyfriend up there in the top right. and thanks for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman here on W4CY Radio.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.